Zlatan Ibrahimovic. He joined in 2009, having transferred to Barcelona as the most expensive signing in the club's history. The deal was complicated. Barcelona paid around 46 million euros plus gave Inter Samuel Eto'o, who was valued at 20 million at the time, so we can say the deal cost Barcelona about 66 million. And by the way, this remained Barcelona's most expensive signing until they got Neymar later on. Anyway, when Ibrahimovic moved to the Catalan club, it was already Zlatan is a self-made, successful guy, a huge star who's super confident. He was the top scorer in the Italian league in his last seasons with Inter. He played in Serie A for 2 straight years, and was named the best foreign player in Italy for 3 years in a row. He won every local trophy with Inter, Serie A, Coppa Italia, and the Supercoppa Italiana. Before that, with Juve, he won the league twice. But as you know, those titles were stripped after the Calciopoli scandal. Even earlier with Ajax, he won the league twice, and the cup once. All these individual and team achievements give any player a big ego. Imagine how much more so when the player is already well known. He's full of arrogance and narcissism. If you read I'm Zlatan book, you'd know this is his personality even before he achieved anything. His tough childhood helped shape this rebellious character. Of course, he kept bragging and exaggerating, but mostly for publicity reasons and stuff like that. Now, Guardiola got rid of ETO because his ego was harmful to the system Pep wanted. So he brought in a player with an even bigger ego. Honestly, that's kind of strange, but there are reasons that might seem convincing. ETO is a top scorer who racks up big numbers, and as you know, football fans are emotional. They'll tell you, you let go of the guy who scored 36 goals last season and just 2 months ago, scored in the Champions League final. So they had to bring in a big striker like him, but also someone with star power and a strong presence. That's why the management had to pay that huge amount for Ibrahimovic. Zlatan says that it was Guardiola who wanted him, not the management forcing it on him. Anyway, things were going pretty well at the start of the season. According to Ibrahimovic, the first 6 months were all good, but after that, Guardiola realized Messi needed to play a bit deeper to be closer to Xavi and Iniesta when receiving the ball. At first, Messi was mostly a winger, doing most of his work on the flanks. Later, he stayed a winger on paper, but the situation changed. The game changed. Messi started playing more like a second striker or a number 10. Zlatan even had to drift out wide a bit to find some space. That obviously didn't work for Ibrahimovic because he's a classic number 9 striker. So, Ibra felt sidelined and couldn't make his impact on the field. That's when his ego kicked in. Messi became the boss, always close to the goal, grabbing every ball near the net. I ended up just picking up the scraps behind him. If Messi had the ball, he'd either pass it to me kindly, or, if he kept it for himself and ignored me, no one would say a word. At least he could have told me what's up. Iniesta and Xavi know how to do their job, but I don't even know how to do mine. That's what made Zlatan decide to confront Guardiola and tell him, I think you're willing to sacrifice some players for just one player, Messi. Zlatan even had that famous quote, I bought a Ferrari, but you treat it like a Fiat. But what happened after that was that Pep started ignoring and avoiding talking to Ibrahimovic, what we'd call silent treatment, so much that sometimes Zlatan would walk into a room where Guardiola was and want to talk to him, but the moment Pep saw him, he'd get up and leave. By the way, that's what made Zlatan call him a coward and immature a few years later. He's a silent pain and not really a man, that's for sure. Anyway, the important thing is that Ibra used to go to training in a Ferrari. Guardiola told him, Barcelona players don't come to training in Ferraris because it's known that Barca players are humble, no matter how big their star status is. So the next day, Zlatan comes to training again in his Ferrari and parks it right outside Guardiola's office. Guardiola was like, what are you trying to do? Finally, after Barcelona got knocked out of the Champions League by Inter in the semi-finals, Zlatan exploded at Guardiola in the locker room and told him, you're a coward, you have no courage. After that fight in the locker room, there was still some league games left. Then Guardiola benched him, brought him on in the last 10 minutes, and in one game he didn't even get on the field at all. After that, he was loaned to Milan, where he shined and they won the Serie A. So Milan bought him outright for 25 million euros, which was a huge financial loss for Barcelona. That was honestly the worst deal in Guardiola's career. Alright, so next up is Benjamin Mendy. The player was part of a team that boosted Kylian Mbappe, Radamel Falcao, Bernardo Silva, Fabinho, Thomas Lemar, Moutinho, Bakayoko, and Abdou Diallo, All these players shined and then moved on to bigger clubs. This team managed to break Paris Saint-Germain's dominance in the league and won the French league after 17 years. They also made it to the Champions League semi-finals. Benjamin Mendy was one of the players who really caught people's attention. At the same time, Manchester City had just lost the league in Guardiola's first season and were spending big in the summer to win it. The following season, they spent around 318 million euros and really needed a left back, especially after Kolarov, Zabaleta, and Clichy left. Funny enough, all three hit the same age at the same time, 32 years old. That's when Benjamin Mendy came into the picture and showed his qualities. The guy was an amazing attacker, one of the best fullbacks in Europe for crossing during the 16-17 season. He was strong and fast, which helped him make forward runs because Leonardo Jardim, the coach, always pushed his fullbacks up. As a result, Monaco always had a numerical advantage on the wings, not just when they had the ball, but even off it. The pressure on the team was intense, and finally Mendy was really good at stopping attacks and making long passes. What's this? All these qualities? He really deserves the 57 million they paid for him. I'll tell you, unfortunately, Mendy had flaws, big ones. Look, sometimes I want to praise him highly, then suddenly we drop all the way down. Defensively, Mendy was very weak, and his positioning was always wrong. Because of that, the spaces behind him were huge. Even with crosses, he couldn't keep an eye on the opposing players. Also, mentally he wasn't the best, he didn't really know how to stay in control. His emotions and recklessness on the field showed when he kicked Tolisso without the ball against Lyon and got a straight red card. That wasn't the first time that season. He did something similar against Villarreal in the Champions League qualifiers, got a yellow, then a second yellow, and was sent off in the same minute. Back then, he was still playing for Monaco, so there wasn't much media coverage and no one really focused on his off-field issues. All this is just talking about his behavior on the pitch. He's a bit hot-headed. You might say, come on bro, surely Man City's scouting team knew all these flaws. I'd say, no, of course they did, but they just weren't that obvious yet. The left side was really hectic in the transfer market back then. Like I told you earlier, Clichy, Zabaleta, and Kolarov were all leaving and there was no one to play left back. Don't forget he played both matches against City, home and away in the Champions League, and put on a strong performance, even assisted a goal, applause. The best part was, he was still young, only 22, so he had room to grow. When this kid gets under Guardiola, we can really use his obvious attacking skills, make them even stronger, and try to fix his defensive weaknesses through tactics, or by helping him be more consistent on the pitch. So, what happened after he signed for Man City? He started the season already injured with fatigue in his knee ligament, then played 4 really good games. But in the 5th match, he tore his ACL and was out for the rest of the season. So basically the guy didn't really play. Alright, the season passed and he had no injury history before we signed him. So we started fresh with the new season. He actually started the new season as a regular and played really well. In the first 4 games, he made 4 assists. Yeah, this guy looked like he was gonna shine and justify the money we spent on him. But then he injured his foot and missed 5 games. He barely played a few matches after that, and after a full game against United, he had knee pain, so he went for surgery. But after the operation, it turned into a long injury that lasted 2 months. Then he came back and played 2 matches, but he got injured in the knee again until the end of the season. Basically, he was out for 2 whole seasons, not playing at all. And by the way, during that season there was an incident where Mendy was late to team training because he had stayed up late watching the Anthony Joshua boxing match. After that, Guardiola lost patience with him in the team. The 3rd season started with him still injured, and when he came back his performance didn't convince Pep, so he benched him and relied less on him. Then, in the 2021 season, Mendy was dropped. Honestly, he stopped making a difference on the bench. It's clear now that Cancelo is the starter, Zinchenko is the backup, and Benjamin Mendy should just go find somewhere else. You've been here for 3 years, and the number of matches you've played doesn't even add up to a full season. We don't even know if we can sell you because of all your injuries. The club was even getting reports about the parties Mendy was throwing at his place. Even during the pandemic and lockdown, he kept organizing those parties at his house. Those parties are actually what got him into trouble. There were lawsuits against him because he was playing PlayStation roughly with girls involved. After the first 2 matches of the 21-22 season, he got arrested and his trial started over the PlayStation incidents. What's weird about these investigations is that they revealed a lot of funny moments, but they also showed the nightlife of the football players in England. These parties were attended by players from all English teams. Anyway, Mendy admitted that he played PlayStation with them, but he was just trying to keep them happy. There was no real strength or power in it. Of course, City stopped paying his salary until his contract ended, and then about 2 years later in the summer of 2023, he was cleared of all charges and got out of prison. Lorient, the French club, signed him, but it was clear his physical condition was totally shot. He also had problems with the team's coach. When Lorient got relegated at the end of the season, Benjamin Mendy was really upset about playing in the second division. He felt like his career was over, man. It was a shame for his long career. What career, though? That was the season he shined with Monaco, and after that we never saw him again. Then, in the next winter transfer window, the club and he agreed to terminate his contract by mutual consent, and after that he moved on a free transfer to FC Zurich. He's Swiss, but it's clear now that he's not just done physically, he's done mentally and emotionally too. You can tell he's barely even into football anymore. There was this match where Zurich lost badly to Basel, 4-0, and later they found out Mendy had gone to a party and stayed out partying until the next morning. On top of that, he got injured at the end of the season. He barely played half the season, only 8 games. Because of all this, they mutually agreed to terminate his contract, and now he's clubless. Okay, fine, let's go to Calvin Phillips. Maybe it was just luck that I knew about it before it blew up in late 2021 and 2022 because I was following the documentary series Take Us Home, which was kind of like reality TV. Everything filmed right in front of you. The series was in 2 parts documenting Leeds' journey to return to the Premier League. You might ask me, how are they so sure they'd get promoted to decide to film it? I'll tell you, the club was bought by new owners who set a project for the team to get promoted again, and they signed Marcelo Bielsa, one of the most important and intellectual coaches in history. They said, let's document this journey, whether it succeeds or fails. Of course, there are production companies and famous platforms involved, so it was a big deal. The important thing is that Calvin Phillips was one of Leeds' key players on this journey. In the first season after promotion, in 2021, we saw Calvin prove himself like a seasoned Premier League player. Many people at the time thought he was the best defensive midfielder, which is why he played for England in Euro 2020, which played in 2021. He was a starter in every match of the tournament, and England made it to the final. But Italy won it in the end on penalties. The important thing is he kept shining the next season. I remember back then people were always comparing who was better, Phillips or Declan Rice. West Ham was holding on tight to Rice and wouldn't sell him for less than 100 million. That was their minimum asking price. So Man City decided to buy Calvin Phillips instead, paying around 50 million, which is half the price they wanted for Declan Rice. And by the way, 50 million was still a big amount for a defensive midfielder at the time. Calvin Phillips' main strengths were his excellent ball interception and tackling skills, plus his ability to win the ball back. He was super disciplined tactically on the pitch, following the coach Matt's instructions to the letter. He had a fighting spirit and never seemed to get tired. He ran non-stop for the full 90 minutes. Another plus was that he could fit well with Guardiola's style. His long passes were precise, which helped break through the opponent's defense or quickly switch play from one side to the other. He was also very committed and focused, whether pressing high up the pitch or staying alert when he had the ball and the other team was pressing him. He's coming out of his situation, and you'll see he wasn't demanding on the field. Like, playing as a lone number 6 is one thing, but he also played with 2 holding midfielders. Actually, 2 number 6s on the pitch. Honestly, that's a nice quality overall. People also said he came up under Pep Guardiola, and he's supposed to be one of Pep's students. Or you could say Pep influenced him mentally. This showed when he said, "Pep taught me the real meaning of football." Pep is the best coach in the world, and you can see that in the high pressing, building up from the back, and the obsession with deep analysis. All these traits were part of Bielsa's style even before they became known as Guardiola's trademarks. So since Phillips came up under Bielsa, like we said, he was definitely going to fit well with Guardiola. That was the general talk back then, or what the media said, just speculation and predictions on paper. And the moment everyone thought was the start of Calvin's prime turned out to be the beginning of Phillips' downfall. In the first month he didn't start a single match. All his appearances were off the bench. Then, unfortunately, he got injured and was out for 2 months. He barely managed to come back from injury less than 2 weeks before the World Cup and went on to play in the tournament. Coming back from the World Cup, Guardiola openly said that Calvin had gained weight and was dealing with physical issues. That's how the whole story started between Phillips and the bench squad. He was about to come on as a substitute, his face lighting up with joy because finally he'd get to play this season. Unfortunately, Guardiola kind of downplayed Calvin's value as a player and also hurt him physically and mentally. Like he'd given up thinking, I'm no longer a player for a top team, I'm just playing for a mid-table club. You might say, but the guy won the Champions League. I'd tell you, my friend, this guy played 40 minutes during the whole tournament. And he didn't play a single second in the quarterfinals, semifinals, or finals. You might say, well, since Rodri is a starter and Guardiola doesn't take him off the pitch, and even Kovacic gets priority over Phillips, why did Calvin stay at City and not find another club where he could get more playtime? Especially since the club had no problem selling or loaning him out. I'll tell you, Phillips still had a small hope to get more playing time the next season, even if it was just as a substitute. The more minutes he played, the better his chances to move to a club better than the one he would have gone to the summer before. Also, he realized that leaving City after just one season would be a clear admission of failure. Unfortunately, most of us humans tend to stick with a failing situation instead of facing it, admitting it, and making a change. Sadly, the 23-24 season was the worst. He played only 4 league games in the first half of the season, and even in those 4, he was just a substitute in the last half hour. That's why he was loaned to West Ham for the rest of the season. People say he didn't want to stay and prove himself without fear of failure. At this rate, my career is falling apart, man. But unfortunately, when he moved to West Ham mid-season, he had already spent a season and a half before that. It turns out In the Fridge is really out of shape physically and needs time to get back in fitness. Of course, that's not acceptable since we're halfway through the season. He just went down without a fight. It's clear that his time at City shook his confidence, which showed in the many mistakes he made against West Ham. Even though he only played half a season with them, he shouldn't have made so many errors. Of course, his loan ended and they told him, "Get out, we don't want you." So he went back to City, who also want to get rid of him. Then he was loaned out again for a season to Ipswich Town, but unfortunately, the same problems kept happening. He kept getting injured throughout the season, so he never really got a chance to regain his fitness and ended up finishing the season like that. He injured his Achilles tendon, and by the way, he's still recovering from it even now. Despite the environment in Ipswich Town being supportive of him mentally, they actually knew what happened to him at West Ham. The fact is, nothing on the ground is really getting better. He can't get back into shape, the team's results on the pitch haven't improved, and everyone knows they're going to be relegated by the end of the season anyway. So, his confidence just kept declining. And like I said, he's still injured now, and of course no club has made an offer to buy or loan him out. City want to get rid of him, but they just don't know how, and honestly, he will not play, since the club didn't even put his name on the European list. Now, moving on to Jack Grealish. The deal that cost Man City €117 million, let me give you a quick summary. When Grealish transferred to City, there were doubts about whether he'd fit Guardiola's style because Grealish had a bit more freedom at Aston Villa, and when he joined City, he was just a chess piece in Pep's hands. At first, his time at City wasn't bad, but he was sharing tight playing space with Raheem Sterling. Still, there were criticisms because expectations were high compared to the price they paid for him. You could say he didn't make much of an impact in his first season, but his second season was his best. He was always a starter in Guardiola's lineup, especially in the Champions League, where he played every match. Full games in the quarterfinals against Bayern, semifinals against Real Madrid, and the final against Inter. He played 90 minutes and won the Champions League with the team. You might say, but his stats weren't that impressive. I'd tell you, Grealish isn't known for scoring loads. His strength is more tactical. He keeps possession well, the ball rarely gets taken off him. He's one of the best in Premier League history at holding onto the ball. When Grealish was on form, everything just clicked. But as you know, football tactics evolve fast. Coaches change their minds quickly. That's how Guardiola realized he needed a winger who's more dynamic, aggressive, less calm, and more energetic. It was random, so they signed Jeremy Doku, a winger who seems kinda crazy, like he might have epilepsy or something. Anyway, in the 23-24 season, Grealish kept getting injured on and off, which really messed with his fitness. But it was clear that Guardiola had fully decided to rely on this Doku guy. You could tell because Grealish was mostly on the bench in the last league games, especially the final 3 matches, which were super important since they were decisive. Unfortunately, Grealish didn't play a single minute in those games, and on top of that, he was hit hard mentally after being left out of Euro 2024. Then, in the 24-25 season, we saw 4 players rotating in and out. The midfielders Foden, Doku, Savinho, and the fourth choice, Grealish, and even Omar Marmoush joined them in the winter. When the media started asking Pep about Grealish's situation, he basically said that Grealish wasn't committed or showing real seriousness or desire. Then, when Grealish scored in January 2025, people were surprised because it was his first goal in a year and 2 months. Yeah, he's more of a tactical player, which was clear back in his Aston Villa days too, but not to the point of going a year and 2 months without scoring. And honestly, what happened in the FA Cup final was a real blow. City was actually losing 1-0 to Crystal Palace. Guardiola dropped all the attacking players from the squad except Grealish. Even Chiferia, who was in the squad for the first time, got to play because Guardiola put him in, but he didn't play Grealish. Later, Grealish was loaned to Everton, and he's been doing great with them so far, but we're still early in the season. We've only played 3 or 4 matches, so we don't know if Grealish will keep performing like this, or if Everton will buy him permanently.
Alright my friend, that's the end of today's episode. And finally, don't forget to hit the like button as a way to appreciate my effort and subscribe to the channel. It's not cool, man, to watch all the videos and still not subscribe. Seriously, that's lame. Drop down to the comments, throw some shade, and tell us who you want the next episode to be about.